A guardian she never asked. Fourth afternoon rain hammered against the windows of the Brooks Gallery, creating rivers of water that distorted the city lights beyond. Natalie Brooks stood before a new installation, a series of abstract paintings about loss and rebirth. Though her mind was anywhere but on the art, her phone had been silent for 3 hours. Ever since the police detective had called to inform her that the restraining order against Trevor Hamilton had been violated again. The 4th time in 2 months, she heard the gallery door open, small bell chiming softly, and turned expecting to see her assistant. Instead, a man walked in, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair slightly damp from the rain and eyes the color of winter storms. He wore a simple black jacket over dark jeans. But there was something about the way he moved, purposeful and alert, that made her instinctively step back. Natalie Brooks. His voice was deep, carrying an edge of authority that immediately set her on guard. "The gallery is closed for private viewing," she replied coolly, crossing her arms. "You'll need to come back tomorrow. I'm not here to view art." Pulled out a leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal credentials. "Jackson Rivers. Your lawyer contacted my security firm. I'm here to assess the situation and provide protection." Natalie felt her stomach tighten. She had argued against this with her lawyer for days, insisting she didn't need a babysitter, that she could handle Trevor herself. But apparently her protests had been overruled. "I didn't agree to this," she said firmly, turning back to the paintings. "I don't need protection, Mr. Rivers. I need privacy. Your needs and your wants are 2 different things right now. Miss Brooks." Jackson moved closer, and she caught a hint of his scent. Something clean and masculine, like cedar and rain. "Trevor Hamilton has escalated from phone calls to showing up at your home. Last week, someone slashed your car tires. 2 days ago, there was a break-in at your apartment. These aren't coincidences." She spun to face him, anger flashing in her brown eyes. "Don't presume to tell me about my own life. I know exactly what Trevor is capable of. But bringing in some stranger to shadow my every move isn't the solution." Jackson's expression remained calm, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition of her fire. "I understand this feels invasive, but I made a commitment to your lawyer, and more importantly, to keeping you safe. Whether you like it or not, I'm here to do a job." "How noble," Natalie shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Another man deciding what's best for me without asking what I actually want." For the first time, Jackson's composed exterior cracked slightly. His jaw tightened, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but somehow more intense. "I'm not Trevor Hamilton. I'm not here to control you or cage you. I'm here because statistics show that when stalking behaviors escalate this quickly, violence usually follows. And I'd rather you hate me for protecting you than have your family mourn you because I walked away." The bluntness of his words struck her silent. Natalie studied his face, looking for manipulation or ego, but found only grim sincerity. This wasn't a man on a power trip. This was someone who understood danger intimately. "Fine," she finally conceded, though the word came out reluctantly. "But stay out of my way, Mr. Rivers. I have a business to run and a life to live. I won't let fear turn me into a prisoner." "Understood," Jackson replied with a slight nod. "I'll maintain distance where possible. But when I assess a situation as high risk, you follow my lead without question, deal?" "We'll see," Natalie answered, refusing to give him complete control. When lightning strikes the next 3 days fell into an uncomfortable rhythm, Jackson was a constant shadow, always present, but attempting to remain unobtrusive. He stood near the gallery entrance during business hours, drove her home each evening, and swept her apartment before allowing her inside. Natalie hated how his presence made her hyper-aware of everything. The sound of his footsteps behind her, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, the careful distance he maintained that somehow felt more intimate than closeness. What unsettled her most was how her body betrayed her mind. She found herself noticing details, the way his hands looked strong and capable, the rare moments when his serious expression softened into something almost like a smile, the depth in his eyes that suggested he carried his own heavy burdens. She caught herself wondering about his past, about what had shaped him into this vigilant guardian. On Thursday evening, They were leaving the gallery late after a private showing for a wealthy collector. The parking garage was dimly lit, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Natalie was fumbling with her keys when she heard it, the screech of tires, an engine revving aggressively. "Natalie!" Jackson's shout came simultaneously with his body slamming into hers. They hit the ground hard. Jackson twisting to take the impact on his back, his arms locked around her waist. A black sedan roared past, missing them by inches, so close that Natalie felt the rush of hot air from its passage. The car's taillights disappeared around a corner, leaving only the smell of burning rubber and the thundering of her heart. For several seconds, neither moved. Natalie lay sprawled across Jackson's chest. Feeling the rapid rise and fall of his breathing, the steel band of his arms still wrapped protectively around her. When she finally lifted her head to look at him, their faces were inches apart. His eyes, those stormy gray eyes, locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. She saw fear there, raw and undisguised, but also something else, something that made her skin flush with heat despite the cool garage air. "Are you hurt?" His voice came out rough, his hands moving over her back, her arms, checking for injuries with professional efficiency that couldn't quite mask the tremor in his fingers. Natalie whispered, though she wasn't sure that was true. Her body was responding to his touch in ways that had nothing to do with the near-death experience. Her pulse racing, her skin tingling everywhere his hands had been. Jackson's jaw clenched, a muscle jumping beneath the stubble that shadowed his face. That wasn't an accident. Trevor knows what vehicle you drive, knows your schedule. His arms tightened around her almost unconsciously. This ends now. The walls begin to crack. Jackson helped her to her feet, but his hand lingered on her elbow, steadying her. They stood in the harsh, fluorescent lighting, both breathing heavily, the adrenaline still pumping through their veins. "We need to call the police," Natalie said, but her voice shook. The reality of what had almost happened was sinking in, making her legs feel weak. Already done. Jackson showed her his phone, already connected to emergency services. "They're on their way. But first, we're getting you somewhere safe." He guided her to his car, a dark SUV with tinted windows, and helped her into the passenger seat with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the tension radiating from his body. As he drove, his knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. "Where are we going?" Natalie asked, watching the city lights blur past. "My place. It's secure, and Trevor doesn't know the location." He glanced at her, his expression softening slightly when he saw her pale face. "Just for tonight. Until we can upgrade security at your apartment and reassess the threat level." Natalie should have protested, should have insisted on going home. But the truth was, she felt safer in this moment, sitting beside Jackson in the quiet darkness of his car, than she had felt in months. And that realization terrified her almost as much as Trevor's escalating violence. Jackson's apartment was surprisingly warm and lived in. Nothing like the sterile bachelor pad she had expected. There were books on the shelves, actual paper books about history and philosophy. A guitar leaning against the wall, photographs of landscapes rather than people. It felt like a sanctuary, a place where a complicated man came to find peace. "You can take the bedroom," Jackson said, setting down her emergency bag that he had grabbed from her apartment. "I'll be on the couch." "Jackson." She stopped him with a hand on his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath his sleeve. When he turned to face her, she saw the careful mask he wore slipping, revealing exhaustion and something deeper, something vulnerable. "Thank you for saving my life tonight, for not saying I told you so." His hand covered hers, warm and strong. "I don't want your gratitude, Natalie. I want you safe. I want you to trust that I'm here for the right reasons." Their eyes met and held, and Natalie felt something shift inside her. A wall she had built so carefully beginning to develop cracks. This man with his storm-colored eyes and quiet strength was getting under her skin in ways she had sworn would never happen again. "Maybe I'm starting, too," she admitted softly. Jackson's thumb traced a gentle circle on the back of her hand. a touch so simple yet so loaded with unspoken meaning that it made her breath catch. Get some rest. Tomorrow we deal with Trevor once and for all, as Natalie lay in his bed later, surrounded by the scent of him on the pillows. She realized that somewhere between resentment and gratitude, between fear and safety, something dangerous had taken root. She was beginning to fall for the one man she had sworn to keep at a distance. The man whose job was to protect her body, but who was slowly, inevitably claiming pieces of her carefully guarded heart. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the old and making space for something new to grow. Shadows and secrets morning light filtered through the curtains of Jackson's apartment, soft and golden, painting everything in warm tones. Natalie woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, before memory crashed back. The car, the near miss, Jackson's arms around her. She sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair, and caught the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the kitchen. When she emerged wearing the spare clothes Jackson had grabbed from her apartment, she found him standing at the stove, making breakfast. He had changed into a simple gray t-shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders, and for the first time since they met, he looked almost relaxed. "Good morning," he said, without turning around, somehow sensing her presence. "Coffee is ready. I hope you like pancakes." "You cook?" Natalie asked, surprised as she poured herself a cup. "My mother insisted all her children learn. Said it was a survival skill more important than any combat training." A shadow crossed his face, something painful and old. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. Natalie moved closer, setting down her cup. "I'm sorry. I lost my father 8 months ago. Heart attack. Sudden and unexpected. One day he was there, planning the gallery expansion with me, and the next he was gone." Jackson turned to face her fully, and in his eyes she saw recognition, the understanding of someone who truly knew grief. "That's why you're so independent. Why you fight so hard against needing anyone." "Maybe," she admitted, leaning against the counter. "After my mother left when I was 12, it was just me and Dad. He taught me to be strong, to rely on myself. And when Trevor came along, charming and attentive, I thought I had found someone safe. Instead, I found someone who wanted to own me." "What happened with him?" Jackson asked gently, plating the pancakes and gesturing for her to sit at the small dining table. Natalie settled into a chair, wrapping her hands around the warm coffee mug. "We dated for 6 months. At first, he was perfect. Flowers, romantic dinners, constant attention. But then it changed. He started questioning where I went, who I saw. He would show up at the gallery unannounced to check on me. When I tried to break things off, he became obsessed. He said I belonged to him, that no one else would ever love me the way he did." Jackson's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her speak. "The restraining order should have ended it. But Trevor doesn't accept boundaries. He sees them as challenges." She looked up at Jackson, vulnerability clear in her expression. "I've been so angry at you for being here because accepting your help means admitting I can't handle this alone. And that terrifies me." Jackson reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch was simple but electric, sending warmth up her arm. "Strength isn't about doing everything alone, Natalie. It's about knowing when to let someone stand beside you. Not in front of you, not behind you, but beside you as an equal." Their eyes met, and Natalie felt her heart skip. This man understood her in ways Trevor never had. Saw her not as something to possess, but as someone to respect. The dance of trust the next few days brought an unexpected rhythm. While the police investigated the parking garage incident, Jackson stayed close, but the dynamic between them had shifted. He asked her opinion before making decisions about her schedule. She found herself actually talking to him. Real conversations about art and music and the books they both loved. On Saturday afternoon, they were in her apartment while Jackson installed additional security equipment. Natalie was sorting through mail when she found another letter from Trevor. Her hands shook as she opened it, and Jackson was immediately at her side. The words inside were poison, disguised as love. Trevor wrote about how they were meant to be together, how Jackson was just a temporary obstacle. how soon everything would return to the way it should be. The letter ended with a chilling line, "You can't hide behind him forever, my love. And when he's gone, you'll remember that you belong to me." "He's watching the apartment," Natalie whispered, the paper falling from her fingers. "He knows about you, knows you're staying here." Jackson picked up the letter, his face darkening as he read. "This is escalating faster than I anticipated. He's becoming desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Detective Morrison. This is direct evidence of continued harassment." While Jackson spoke with the police, Natalie walked to the window, hugging herself. She felt exposed, vulnerable in ways that went beyond physical danger. Trevor had already stolen so much from her: her sense of safety, her ability to trust, her joy in simple freedoms. She refused to let him take anything more. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and she startled before recognizing Jackson's scent, his warmth. "I won't let him hurt you," he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "I promise you that." Natalie turned in his arms, looking up at his face. "You can't promise that. Trevor is unpredictable and dangerous. What if something happens to you because of me?" Jackson's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek with infinite gentleness. "Then it happens. Some things are worth the risk, Natalie. Some people are worth fighting for." The air between them grew thick with tension, with everything they had been carefully not saying. Natalie's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. "This is complicated," she whispered, even as she leaned closer. "You're supposed to be protecting me, maintaining professional distance." "I know," Jackson replied, his voice rough. "I've broken every rule I set for myself, but I can't seem to stop. You've gotten under my skin, Natalie Brooks. Into my head, my heart, places I thought were locked down forever. When did it happen?" She asked softly, "When did this become more than just a job?" Jackson smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "The moment you stood in that gallery and challenged me with fire in your eyes. I thought you were the most magnificent thing I'd ever seen." Darkness falls that evening. The power went out. Not just in Natalie's apartment, but the entire building, plunging everything into darkness. Jackson was immediately alert, his hand finding hers in the blackness. "Stay close to me," he instructed, his voice calm but commanding. "This could be coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore." They heard it then, the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside, slow and deliberate. Someone was moving through the darkness, and Natalie knew with cold certainty who it was. "Trevor," she breathed. Fear icing her veins, Jackson pulled her behind him, moving them away from the door toward the bedroom. "Get in the closet," he whispered urgently. "Lock the door, and don't come out until I come for you." "No." Natalie gripped his arm. "I'm not leaving you to face him alone, Natalie, please." For the first time since they met, she heard real fear in his voice. "I can't do my job if I'm worried about you. I need to know you're safe." The apartment door burst open, the lock splintering under force. Trevor's voice called out, artificially cheerful and deeply wrong. "Natalie, my love, I know you're here. It's time to stop this foolishness and come home where you belong." Jackson's hand tightened on hers for just a moment, a silent communication of everything they hadn't had time to say. Then he gently pushed her toward the bedroom. "Go. Now." Natalie ran, her heart pounding, and ducked into the bedroom closet, pulling the door almost closed, but leaving a crack so she could see. Through the darkness, she watched Jackson position himself in the living room, calm and ready. Trevor appeared, holding a flashlight and something else that made Natalie's blood run cold. A knife, the blade catching the beam of light. "Where is she?" Trevor demanded, his voice no longer cheerful but sharp with rage. "Where's my Natalie?" "She's not yours," Jackson replied evenly. "She never was. And you need to leave now, before this gets worse for you." Trevor laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Worse for me? You're the one standing between me and what belongs to me. You're the problem that needs to be removed." What happened next occurred in a blur. Trevor lunged with the knife, and Jackson moved with the fluid grace of someone trained for combat. They collided, struggling for control of the weapon. Furniture crashed, glass shattered, and Natalie pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Jackson managed to disarm Trevor, sending the knife skittering across the floor. But Trevor was larger than he appeared and fueled by obsession. They fought brutally, fists and bodies slamming into walls. Natalie saw Jackson take a hard hit to the ribs, saw him stumble but recover quickly. "You think you know her?" Trevor spat, breathing heavily. "You think she loves you? She's mine. She'll always be mine." "She's her own person," Jackson growled back, landing a solid punch to Trevor's jaw. "And she chose to be done with you. Accept it." Trevor grabbed a lamp, swinging it wildly, and caught Jackson across the temple. Jackson went down hard, and Trevor was on him immediately, hands wrapping around his throat. Natalie couldn't watch anymore. She burst from the closet, grabbing the heavy art book from the bedside table, and ran into the living room. "Get away from him," she screamed, bringing the book down hard on the back of Trevor's head. Trevor released Jackson, turning on her with wild eyes. "Natalie. My Natalie. You hit me. Why would you hurt me when I love you so much?" "That's not love," Natalie said, backing away as Trevor advanced on her. "Love doesn't control. Love doesn't terrorize. Love doesn't hurt. I'll show you what love is," Trevor said, reaching for her. But Jackson was back on his feet, blood streaming from the cut on his forehead. He grabbed Trevor from behind, putting him in a chokehold. "It's over," Jackson said firmly. "The police are already on their way. You're done." As if summoned by his words, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Trevor struggled, but Jackson held firm until the apartment filled with officers, flashlights cutting through the darkness. They pulled Trevor away, handcuffing him as he shouted threats and proclamations of love that turned Atali's stomach. When the police finally led Trevor out, still screaming her name, Natalie's legs gave out. Jackson caught her, lowering them both to the floor, holding her as she shook with the aftermath of adrenaline and fear. "It's over," he murmured into her hair, rocking her gently. "He can't hurt you anymore." "You're bleeding," Natalie said, pulling back to touch his face gently, her fingers coming away red. "You need medical attention." "I'm fine," Jackson assured her, but his eyes were dark with something beyond pain. "Natalie, when I saw him come at you, when I thought I might not be fast enough, I realized something." "What?" she whispered, her hands framing his face. "That I'm in love with you. Completely, terrifyingly in love with you. And I don't care about professional boundaries or complications. I just care about you." Natalie's breath caught, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love you too. I fought it, told myself it was too fast, too complicated, but I can't deny it anymore. You make me feel safe and seen and cherished in ways I never thought possible." Jackson pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "I know this started in crisis, but I want to see where it goes in peace. I want to know who we are when danger isn't pushing us together." "Me too," Natalie whispered. And then she kissed him, soft and slow and full of promise, tasting the salt of blood and tears and hope on his lips. Healing together 2 weeks passed in a blur of police statements, court hearings, and paperwork. Trevor Hamilton was officially charged with stalking, assault, breaking and entering, and attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming, and his bail was revoked. He would be going to prison for a long time. Jackson stayed through all of it, not as a bodyguard anymore, but as something infinitely more precious. He held Natalie's hand during the difficult testimony, celebrated with her when the judge issued a permanent restraining order, and simply sat with her during the quiet moments when the trauma tried to resurface. On a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after Trevor's arrest, Natalie woke in Jackson's arms in his apartment where she had been spending most nights. The morning light painted stripes across the bed, and she took a moment to simply watch him sleep, marveling at the peace on his face. So different from the alert guardedness he usually wore. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her with that stormy gray gaze that never failed to make her heart skip. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," Natalie replied honestly. "Not because of what happened with Trevor, but because somehow, through all that darkness, I found you." "Found us," Jackson pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I'm the lucky one. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Natalie. The way you faced him, the way you refused to let fear win, it's extraordinary. I had help, she said, tracing patterns on his bare chest with her fingertip. I had you believing in me, standing beside me. That made all the difference. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, simply being together without the weight of danger pressing down on them. It was new, this peace, and they were both learning how to exist in it. What happens now? Natalie finally asked. With your work, I mean. Do you have another client waiting? Jackson was quiet for a moment, his hand absently stroking her hair. I've been thinking about that. I built my security business because I was good at protecting people. And after I left the Marines, it felt like the only thing I knew how to do. But lately I've been wondering if there's more. More like what? I got an offer last week from a private security training academy. They want me to teach, to train the next generation of bodyguards and security specialists. Better hours, based in the city, no overnight assignments. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. I turned it down initially because I wasn't sure where we stood. But if this is real, if we're building something here, I'd like to take it. Natalie's heart swelled. You'd do that? Change your whole career? It's not a sacrifice, Jackson said firmly. It's a choice. I choose you, Natalie. I choose us. And I want a life where I can come home to you every night, where we can plan a future without always being ready for the next crisis. Tears pricked Natalie's eyes, but they were happy tears. Then say yes. Take the job. Build that future with me. Jackson kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise, his hands tangling in her hair, hers clutching his shoulders. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, eyes dark with desire that had become familiar and cherished. Facing the past later that afternoon, Jackson had something he needed to do, and he asked Natalie to come with him. They drove out of the city to a small cemetery on a hillside overlooking a valley. The grass was green and well-maintained. The headstones neat rows of memory. Jackson led her to a grave marked with a simple stone. Lieutenant Amy Chen. Beloved sister, fallen hero. I told you I left the Marines after losing someone, Jackson said quietly. Staring down at the grave, this is Amy. She was on my team, my responsibility. We were on a protection detail in hostile territory, and I made a call that got her killed. Natalie took his hand, squeezing gently, letting him know she was there. For 3 years I carried that guilt. Threw myself into private security work, determined never to fail again, never to let emotions cloud my judgment. He turned to look at Natalie. But then I met you, and for the first time since Amy died, I felt something besides guilt and duty. I felt alive. She would want that for you, Natalie said softly. Anyone who cared about you would want you to be happy, to let yourself live and love again. I know, Jackson nodded. I've been talking to a therapist, working through it, and I think Amy would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who could match my stubbornness with their own. Natalie laughed softly, leaning against his shoulder. I think I would have liked her too. They stood there for a while in the peaceful silence of the cemetery, honoring the past while choosing to move forward into the future. When they finally left, Jackson seemed lighter, as if sharing this piece of himself had lifted a weight he had been carrying too long. New beginnings, the Brooks. Gallery held a special exhibition opening for weeks after Trevor's arrest. It was Natalie's first major event since everything had happened, and she had poured herself into it, creating a show about resilience and transformation. The paintings and sculptures all told stories of surviving darkness and finding light. Jackson stood near the entrance in a sharp suit that made him look both dangerous and devastatingly handsome. He was officially off duty now, just there as her partner, but old habits died hard. His eyes still scanned the crowd, still tracked exits, still positioned himself where he could see everything. You clean up nice. Mr. Rivers, Natalie teased, walking over to him with 2 glasses of champagne. You're stunning. Miss Brooks, he replied, his eyes traveling appreciatively over her emerald green dress. This show is incredible. Your best work yet. It's personal, Natalie admitted. Every piece here represents something I learned these past few months. About strength, about vulnerability, about the courage it takes to trust again. Jackson set down his glass and took both her hands. I have something to tell you, and I want to say it here, surrounded by your art and your triumph. Natalie's heart began to race. Okay, I love you, Natalie Brooks. I love your strength and your softness, your stubbornness and your compassion. I love how you see beauty in broken things and find ways to make them whole again. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet. We both need more time to heal, to build our relationship on solid ground. But I am asking you to accept this as a promise. He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring with 3 stones: emerald, sapphire, and diamond. Emerald for growth, sapphire for loyalty, diamond for forever. This is my promise that I'm in this for the long run, that I will stand beside you through whatever comes, and that when the time is right, I will ask you properly. Natalie's vision blurred with tears as Jackson slipped the ring onto her right hand. It's perfect, she whispered. You're perfect. And yes, I accept your promise. I make you the same one. I choose you, Jackson Rivers, today and every day after. He pulled her into his arms right there in the gallery, kissing her in front of the crowd who broke into spontaneous applause. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling, eyes shining with happiness. Forever starts, 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon. Jackson took Natalie back to the gazebo by the lake, where he had first told her he loved her. The trees were ablaze with red and gold, the water reflecting the brilliant colors like liquid fire. I brought you here for a reason, Jackson said, taking both her hands as they stood in the center of the gazebo, fallen leaves creating a natural carpet beneath their feet. I remember, Natalie smiled. This is where you shared your secret place with me, where we started building something real. And now I want to make it even more real. Jackson dropped to one knee, pulling out another box, this time with a stunning diamond ring that caught the afternoon light. Natalie Brooks, you are my best friend, my greatest adventure, the person who taught me that love is worth the risk. You took a broken soldier and helped him remember how to live, not just survive. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how deeply, completely, eternally you are loved? Natalie dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring about the leaves or her dress, taking his face in her hands. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I will marry you, Jackson Rivers. I will build a life with you, fill it with love and art and music and joy. I will stand beside you through every challenge and celebrate every victory. I choose you forever. Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed there in the gazebo, sealing a promise that had been forged in fire and tempered by trust. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their happiness. I never thought I'd find this, Natalie admitted, holding up her hand to watch the ring sparkle. After everything with Trevor, I was so sure I would never trust anyone with my heart again. I never thought I deserved this, Jackson replied, pulling her close. After Amy, I believed happiness was for other people, not for someone who had failed so completely. We were both wrong, Natalie said firmly. We both deserve love, deserve happiness, deserve forever. And we found it in each other. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the lake, making plans and dreaming about the future. They would have a small wedding, intimate and meaningful, surrounded by the people who mattered most. They would buy a house with a studio for Natalie's art and a workshop for Jackson's woodworking hobby he had recently discovered. They would travel, create, laugh, and live with the kind of joy that only comes from knowing you've found your person. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Jackson wrapped his arms around Natalie from behind, and they watched the light play across the water. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? Jackson asked softly. In the gallery, when I told you I was there to protect you? I said I didn't need protection, Natalie recalled, smiling at the memory. I said I needed privacy. And you were right, Jackson said, pressing a kiss to her temple. You didn't need someone to fight your battles. You needed someone to stand beside you while you fought them yourself. That's what love is. Not rescuing someone, but believing in them enough to let them be strong. Natalie turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had become her everything. You taught me that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites. That asking for help doesn't make you weak. That love, real love, makes you braver than you ever thought possible. We taught each other, Jackson corrected gently, and we'll keep teaching each other for the rest of our lives. As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the vast sky above, Natalie and Jackson remained wrapped in each other's arms. Two souls who had found their home in each other. They had survived the storm, healed their wounds, and built something beautiful from the ashes of their broken pasts. Their story had started with danger and resistance, with walls and warnings, but it had transformed into something neither had expected. A love that was equal parts passion and peace, fire and safety, challenge and comfort. Trevor Hamilton remained in prison, no longer a threat but a distant memory of a darkness they had overcome together. The gallery thrived under Natalie's creative vision. Jackson's training academy produced some of the best security professionals in the country. They built a life filled with art and laughter, quiet mornings and passionate nights. Separate dreams that had woven together into a shared future, and every year on the anniversary of the day they met, they returned to this gazebo by the lake, renewing their promises and celebrating the miracle of finding each other. Because some loves are worth fighting for, some promises are worth keeping, and some people are worth every risk. Natalie had sworn she would never fall for him, would never let another man close enough to hurt her. But Jackson Rivers had proven that the right love doesn't hurt. It heals, it strengthens, it transforms, and it lasts forever. Under the stars, surrounded by the peace they had fought so hard to find, Jackson and Natalie began the next chapter of their story, knowing that whatever challenges life brought, they would face them together, hand in hand, heart to heart, forever.